If you ever feel just completely exhausted by modern politics, the constant fighting, the outrage, how every single issue seems to instantly get sorted into a neat left or right box, I want you to think about something for a second.
Hmm.
What if that whole division, the very thing that seems to govern everything we see is, well, what if it's just an illusion?
An illusion.
Yeah. What if the entire political spectrum, that single line we use to organize our world, is actually fundamentally misleading us?
That's a huge question.
It is. And we're diving deep into an argument that challenges that very foundation today. We're trying something new here, a more in-depth approach to book coverage with this extended summary.
Right. This isn't like our previous reviews, which are more of a focused analysis.
Exactly. This is a comprehensive overview.
Yeah.
We're tracing the intellectual roots, the key arguments, and the real-world impact. And if you find this expanded format helpful, please let us know. Your feedback is what's going to shape our future content.
And just for context, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation. It's powered by Google's Notebook LM, and it's all designed for deeper, more dynamic book summaries.
Our focus today is the book, The Myth of Left and Right: How the Political Spectrum Misleads and Harms America, by Veron Lewis and Hiram Lewis.
It's a really interesting work. It blends political science, a deep dive into intellectual history, and a pretty forceful normative argument.
And our mission here is to really understand their case against what they call the essentialist view of ideology. They're not saying people don't disagree. Of course they do. They're saying the framework we use for those disagreements is, well, it's completely broken.
And their central claim is a real game changer. They argue that the labels left and right in America today, they don't represent coherent, stable philosophies.
So they're not based on some timeless principle like, say, small government versus big government.
Not at all. Instead, they say these labels function primarily as social tribes. We join a tribe, and then we adopt whatever bundle of positions that tribe happens to be endorsing at the moment.
So the spectrum isn't a map of ideas.
It's a scoreboard for team loyalty.
Yeah.
And that tribal loyalty, not some abstract philosophy, is the real myth of left and right.
Okay, let's unpack that term, the myth. When the authors talk about the myth, what exactly are they pointing to?
They're talking about the false belief that there's a single underlying essence, a kind of master principle that organizes all political issues along one simple line.
The idea you see on the news every night, basically.
Precisely. They label this the essentialist theory of ideology. It's the theory that says all your positions on everything from taxes to foreign policy, they all group together because they flow logically from one master issue.
Like freedom versus equality or something like that.
Exactly. Or more versus less government. It's the story intellectuals and politicians tell to make their side, their tribe, look consistent and principled.
But the authors have a rival explanation, a completely different way of looking at it. The social theory of ideology.
Right. And this theory argues that the clustering of beliefs happens for social reasons. People anchor themselves in a tribe, maybe through their family, their friends, or even just one single issue they really care about.
So you might join a side because of your stance on, say, gun control.
Precisely. And once you're anchored, you start to adopt the rest of the tribe's positions. It happens through socialization, through identity, through loyalty. The identity drives the beliefs.
Wow. So it's not the other way around.
It's completely reversed. We don't study philosophy, pick our principles, and then find the team that matches. We pick a team, and the team gives us the pre-approved package of principles.
And the book has evidence for this.
Oh, yeah. They point to a mountain of empirical support. Survey research, lab experiments, all suggesting that this social theory is a much, much better predictor of how people actually get their political views. Groups like liberals and conservatives are. They're perfect case studies in tribal behavior.
And the authors don't just use data, they use history to show how random these ideological bundles really are. Where do they start with that?
Well, they trace the history of the labels themselves. Chapter 2 of the book grounds the terms left and right in, of all things, the seating arrangement of the French Revolution.
Cool. It was literally just about where people sat in a room.
That's it. An accident of geography. And those labels were only gradually imported into American politics in the early 20th century. That slow import is key because it shows how contingent it all is.
Right. If these labels were some timeless truth, they wouldn't just suddenly appear and start shifting in meaning.
And this is where the argument really becomes a wrecking ball for the conventional wisdom. They show how issue positions have completely reversed over time.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's take foreign intervention, hawkishness. Before the Cold War, the most fervent interventionists were often progressives, Think of Woodrow Wilson and the League of Nations,
And Republicans at the time,
often the party of isolationism, staying out of foreign entanglements.
which is the complete opposite of what we see today.
Totally flipped. For the last 50-plus years, a large military and interventionism have been signatures of the conservative right, while the progressive left often argues for restraint.
So how does the essentialist theory explain that? If one side is small government, why did they become the big military side?
It can't. The authors argue these shifts were driven by specific events, World War II, the Cold War, that just shattered old coalitions and forced politicians to build new, temporary bundles of ideas.
And you see the same kind of chaos with government size too, right?
Absolutely. Before the New Deal, coalitions were much more defined by things like geography or religion, not some unified economic philosophy.
So the idea that one party is big government and the other is small government is actually a pretty new invention.
Very new. It's really a post-1930s idea, solidified by FDR's response to the Great Depression. The neat packages we see today just didn't exist before that. Ideology isn't an essence. It's an evolving package that coalitions build in response to crises.
Before we dig into why this myth is still so powerful, we want to mention our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments. It offers AI book analysis, summaries, and critiques.
It's a great resource for inspiring reflection and rational thought.
And it's also really valuable for any aspiring authors out there looking to sharpen their own ideas and arguments.
So, if history shows how unstable all this is, who's keeping the illusion alive? The book points a finger directly at intellectual elites and media figures.
Oh, it's supporting actors.
Exactly. They construct these grand narratives, freedom versus security or capitalism versus socialism, to rationalize whatever their side's current platform is. They're basically writing the philosophy after the tribe has already decided what it believes.
They make it look principled.
They create the illusion of principle. They'll take a bundle of contradictory ideas like being for fiscal restraint, but also for huge corporate subsidies, and then they'll write a high-minded argument for why that's actually the purest form of their ideology. They just ignore all the counterexamples.
Which brings us to a huge question. If the myth is so shaky, why do people cling to it so fiercely?
This is maybe the most important part of the book. The authors say it's not about logic. We cling to the spectrum because of our deep partisan identity, because of media reinforcement, and just social comfort.
The feeling of belonging to the tribe.
And that emotional reward, that
Yeah.
feeling of being on the right side, it just overrides any need for intellectual consistency.
And the book gets into the specific mechanisms, right? Things like partisan sorting and, what was it? Identity protective cognition.
Yes, exactly. Partisan sorting is how we increasingly surround ourselves with people just like us. In our neighborhoods, in our social circles, we create these echo chambers.
And once you're sorted into your tribe,
Identity protective cognition kicks in. That's our brain's tendency to process information in a way that just confirms what our group already believes. It protects our identity.
so if your team suddenly flips on an issue, your brain will actually work to convince you that the new position is perfectly consistent with your core values.
Even if it contradicts everything you believed 5 years ago. The tribe gives you the package, and you accept it, because leaving the tribe is it's too painful. The intellectual cost is too high.
This all leads to what they call the package deal problem.
Right. People stop looking at immigration or trade or climate change as separate issues to be solved.
Yeah.
They just become the things my side believes. You take the whole package, no questions asked.
And the book details the real measurable harms that come from this.
It does. First, it just creates massive confusion. The labels are so unstable that nobody really knows what conservative or liberal even means anymore.
And second, and this seems much more dangerous,
It encourages tribal animosity. If you believe your side comes from a pure moral principle, then the other side isn't just wrong on policy. They must be fundamentally flawed or evil.
it turns every disagreement into a moral crusade.
And third, on a practical level, it completely blocks nuanced thinking. We have complex modern problems, AI regulation, gene editing, data privacy, that do not fit on a simple left-right line.
But we're forced to cram them into that obsolete framework anyway.
It's totally obsolete for dozens of issues. It forces politicians to take positions they might not even agree with, just to maintain the illusion of tribal consistency.
So, is there a way out? What do the authors propose we do?
They do look forward. They suggest moving toward multidimensional or non-spectral ways of thinking about politics. It's not about eliminating disagreement. It's about making it more realistic.
How do we do that?
The core reform they suggest is a commitment to issue-by-issue analysis. Instead of asking, is this a left or right position, we should be asking, what are the actual values at stake here?
Is it about efficiency versus equity?
Or privacy versus security? Or innovation versus stability? It forces you to think in multiple dimensions, economic, social, technological, instead of collapsing everything onto one broken line.
Which would make political debate more productive, I imagine.
Potentially, yeah. Because then you're arguing about policy details, not the moral purity of your tribe.
So this is a concise, really argumentative book. It's a profound critique of how we even conduct our debates.
It is. If you're politically engaged and worried about polarization, this is a book that will make you question the most basic assumptions you make every single day.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? If we accept this argument that our politics are driven more by who we're with than what we believe, how does that change how you approach debates or policy or even just voting?
The authors suggest that just abandoning that essentialist belief in left versus right could, by itself, weaken the tribal hatred. It removes the intellectual excuse for all that moral outrage.
So is stepping off the spectrum, refusing to accept the package deal, is that the first step toward genuine intellectual freedom in politics? That's not really worth mulling over.
Click the link on screen for the in-depth book critique. Subscribe, share, purchase via the link, and think rationally.
See the many genre-based book podcasts at Mindful Moments. Subscribe and nourish your mind on the go.